I can see I can see the chat. We will be utilizing that today. Um, so today we're going to go through houseplant diagnostics. Before we get started, I do want to mention that any trade name products, services, books that I specifically mention are illustrations only. This does not mean that you and our extension either endorses these products and services or discriminates against other products and services that are not mentioned. Just a very brief legal statement before we get started. And then we also want to let you know that we receive federal grant funding for this program. We're showing you this poster to inform you that our university and extension's responsibility for implementing the requirement of equal opportunity. Awesome. So let's get started. So we're going to go through abiotic and biotic first. This is really important to know when you're looking at a problem in your plants. This entire presentation is about finding out what the issues are in your plants. So firstly, we have abiotic. These are our non-living factors. So environment, temperature, water, light, nutrients, that type of thing. And then we have biotic, which is our living factors. So fungi, insects, animals, bacteria, that type of stuff. My question for you guys, do you think a virus would be abiotic or biotic? I'll give you a second in the chat. Biotic, okay? Viruses are technically abiotic. They are not living. That's some biology. There is some discussion there as to why they're not living, but they do not have a living factor inside of them. They rely on a host. What about soil? Where do you think soil would be placed? Let's see. Abiotic. Okay, I'm seeing a mixed response for that. That's great because soil would be both. A healthy soil is biotic. It has living factors to it. But for the most part, soil is abiotic. It is minerals, nutrients, that type of stuff. Exactly, abiotic except for the animals in it, which are our fungi, our bacteria, that type of stuff. Great job. Okay. Now let's go on to the categories of problems we most often see in houseplants. The most common one is care-based issues. This is where you're looking at your plant and you're not giving it the stuff that it actually needs. We also have diseases. These are often from soil, water, or tools that are contaminated with disease from another plant and then they get spread. These can become worse when improper care is given, so that will make the problem even worse. One infected plant can spread disease to another plant, even if they're just side by side in different pots. We also have pests. Oftentimes your pests come with your plant when you purchase them. They are capable of hitchhiking on your clothing if you're working in a nursery, if you are working outside and have pests outside. They can hitchhike on your clothes inside to those plants. If you put your plant outside in the summer because it loves the sun and it grows so much, when it comes back inside, it will have new friends on it. You're going to hear me say it quite frequently. Do not put your houseplants outside. Our care-based issues. Oh, sorry, guys. I don't know why. Okay, we're good. Our care-based issues, those are most likely abiotic issues, whereas our diseases and pests, these are our biotic issues. Okay. So let's talk about integrated pest management. Integrated pest management is a management process to solve pest issues or disease issues, any plant issue, in fact, while minimizing the risk to ourselves and our environment. It's a triangle with 5 different steps on it. The first step is always prevention. The best way to prevent your plants from getting sick is to look at their care needs and provide those. We then have cultural and sanitation. So that is making sure that you're isolating your plants, that type of thing when you get a new plant in. Then physical and mechanical, this would be like insect traps, like sticky cards, that type of thing. Then we have biological. Biological is hard to apply inside. You can buy nematodes to help your soil out. We'll go into that some more in a bit. And then we have chemical and pesticide use is the very last option. We want to avoid jumping to chemical use in general because chemicals often build up resistance, especially in our insect pests. And then we lose tools. they are needed sometimes when you have a really severe outbreak, but you want to minimize your usage of them so that you can use them more often. It's like if you get a paper cut on your pinky, you're not going to go cut off your whole finger because of that one paper cut. You're going to look at other options to heal it before that, if that makes sense. So let's talk about prevention. This is the most important step. When you have a houseplant, it should stay inside year round. You're like, well, Megan, I have this beautiful fig tree that loves going outside in the summer. I understand. A citrus tree, especially when you live in a colder climate, taking it in and out, it makes sense in some applications, but you will end up having pest issues because of it. It's just a known thing where there are insects outside, there are not as many insects inside, so you're going to bring some insects in with you. Making sure your soil is nutritious for your plant. Repotting your plant is really important. When you bring a plant home from the nursery, you can leave it in that pot for a little bit, but it will need repotting. That's how you get it new soil. And when you repot, you want to remove as much soil from that plant as possible before putting it in new soil without damaging the roots. Making sure you have drainage holes in your plants. This depends on you. I tend to underwater my plants severely. I kind of neglect them a little bit. So I don't have as much drainage as some people need. If you tend to overwater your plant, you will need more drainage for your plants to make sure that soil isn't keeping that moisture in. If you are buying new plants, you should isolate them before you introduce them to their new friends. Plants do love being in groups together. It increases the relative humidity around them, and it makes them really, really happy. But you need to isolate them and monitor the plants before they go into that group of friends. And then learn about your plant's natural environment. Google the name of your plant, figure out where it naturally grows and what environmental needs it needs. And then, yes, I already discussed grouping your plants together. So these are some plants that have problems generally. Calatheas, fiddle-leaf figs, begonias, ferns, master palms, and peace lilies. Some people have great success with these. Other people struggle a lot with them. Some of these plants are on my no purchase list from now on because calatheas and fiddle-leaf figs and me don't get along. I just don't water my plants enough for the amount of water they need. These are some really friendly beginner plants. If you are looking for plants these are great gifting plants for someone that doesn't have a green thumb. They don't have many houseplants. These ones are all very easy to keep alive and don't require much care at all. Okay. So let's talk about treatment that applies to all. When you're isolating your plants, it's kind of hard to find an area that's completely away from all of the other plants. Insects fly a lot of times. I recommend these insect breeding habitats. You can purchase these at a lot of different gardening stores or Amazon. They're meant to be for raising insects, but they're also great for putting a plant in and trapping the insects in there. Sometimes it is best to just give up on a plant. It's okay to give up on a plant. Plants are replaceable unless it's like a really deep, like a family memory, that type of thing, then propagation's always an option. But the root system might have issues and it's easier to just restart. And then sometimes a shower can be the best thing for your plant. Really washing the soil through and washing the plant leaves can help tremendously. Okay. Pests are also seasonal, I will mention that. Typically, people are seeing fungus gnats around this time of year and then in the spring. They're the most annoying pest, annoying to me because they drive my cats crazy. So this is what I was talking about when you need to think about your plants in the natural environment. This is a Monstera deliciosa that I saw in Hawaii. These plants are native to Central America and tropical forests. They like to climb and trail, and they can get huge. So when you're looking at having a Monstera in your house, you can absolutely contain it and make sure it doesn't get too big. But there is the part of it that wants to climb. And if you want a healthy plant, being able to provide structure for it to climb will help a lot. Also, before we get too far into our symptoms we're specifically going through, symptoms can often be indicators for multiple potential issues. So this plant right here has herbicide damage. That's what all of this brown is. on these leaves. We'll go into that those symptoms more. But you can also see it has rocks that are glued on top of the soil. That's not going to allow water to enter and drain through the soil very healthily. So this plant in general has multiple issues going on. Okay, so I'm going to mention some additional resources. These are some books that I've used in the past that have been really very helpful for when you're trying to figure out a problem. The first one and the last one are around $10 to $15. This middle one's a bit more expensive. It's around $30 depending on where you're buying it. They're also, your local library most likely has all of these books. They're pretty common houseplant books. And then I have some links for you guys for free resources online. The University of Georgia has an online course. It's kind of like a textbook that has some great information, a lot of information on soil mixtures for different plants, which I won't be going into today. University of Wisconsin has an amazing houseplant page. And then the Missouri Botanical Gardens has a plant finder. So you can just Google the name of your plant and it will bring it up for you and have some care instructions. Okay. So let's go on to our issues. Firstly, brown leaf tips. So this is often caused by either over or underwatering, the air being really dry, high temperatures and too much sunlight, or overfeeding. So I'm not going to read through all of the solutions for this. We're going to talk through a lot of photos. That's why I gave you guys the PowerPoint slides, because there's a lot of information on these slides and then a lot of photos. So here, let's talk about this first one. This is a Calathea peacock. The Calatheas are really, really sensitive to tap water. They don't have the means to expel the chemicals that are found in tap water, which means that they develop those brown tips on the end. That's why this guy has it, because he's just been watered from a hose in the nursery. These tips aren't really damaging the plant in terms of its overall health. It's still able to photosynthesize, produce new leaves with no issues. It's just not the best look for it. So as you have the plant in your care, it will start looking healthier if you give it filtered water. This is another Calathea seagull. This one has brown tips and then brown spots as well due to underwatering and the drainage. It's kind of hard to see in here, but the entire plant was on a drainage tray, but there was 20 plus plants being watered on that drainage tray. So the drainage tray was just filling up with about 2 inches of water that the plants were then sitting in. If you have drainage, that's great, but the water needs to be able to evaporate properly for it to work. So then here we have a Monstera, Thai constellation. And sorry, this photo is not great. You can kind of see in the back here, this entire leaf tip from here all the way around was black. It wasn't a brown leaf tip, it was very dark black. And that's caused by root rot. Root rot is caused by overwatering with lack of drainage. The pot that this plant was in, the drainage pot on it is attached. So there's only one tiny, tiny hole for drainage. And while that works for me when I'm underwatering severely, this plant was bought at Walmart and it was in one of those trays again where the drainage doesn't drain properly. It just sits in that water, causing root rot. I repotted it, I removed some of those roots that were rotted, and it is significantly happier now. Later in the PowerPoint, I have an example of what root rot looks like in roots, but more than anything, you'll be able to smell it. Root rot is really stinky. Okay, let's go on to holes in your leaves. So almost always, if there's a hole in your leaf, it's due to pest damage. So this right here is a new leaf on a plant. They come out and they're really curled up tight. And this, you can see these holes in this direct line all the way across, is an insect that's eaten through that leaf while it was still curled up. You can also get holes in your leaves from insects that have eaten them once they've already unfurled. But this was a caterpillar that damaged this leaf right here. However, you can get holes in your leaves from other things. Does anyone have any idea what the holes in this leaf were caused by? I see it already, yep. It's my cat. This is my cat who, when when he gets hungry and he is trying to tell me he wants food, he tries to eat my plants. So all of my plants are either hanging or on very tall plant stands. Yes, he is a very handsome boy, but he is evil. So if you're trying to protect your pets from your plants and protect your plants as well, you can always have a sacrificial plant like cat grass. My cat loves this. I do actually have to hide it from him, otherwise he'll eat it all at once and make himself sick. You can buy products, make sure you're following the directions. A lot of these are citrus sprays, which cats don't like strong odors, but just make sure you're using them according to the directions so you don't harm your cats. They can be pretty strong. And then you can also put forks or chopsticks in your soil to make the plant just less appealing for your cat to get into. You can buy these things. My cat is 20 pounds, so these would not work. He's a very big boy, but that will protect your soil as well from your cats. Okay, so let's talk about your leaves turning yellow. This is the most common problem with plants that I hear about because it is natural as well. The leaves naturally turn yellow when they are draining the nutrients out of them. You don't want to remove them while they're turning yellow. That's while they're sucking all that nutrients back in so they can repurpose it. Once they turn brown, you can cut it off with clean scissors so you're not spreading disease. It can also be due to underfeeding. You might need to either fertilize or repot. It can also be due to under or overwatering, and then cold drafts. So here we have an example of a neon pothos where my leaves on the bottom end were turning yellow, which while it would be normal to some extent, it was strange because it was happening at random points and not every leaf in order was turning yellow, if that makes sense. This is most likely due to a nutrients deficiency. They've been in this pot 2 years, 2.5 years, and I think they need to be either repotted or they need to have more soil added that's fresher. Okay, this guy is oh, I just blanked on the name. It'll come back to me. I got him at Costco for $35. It was an alocasia. Thank you, Abigail. It was $35. I was like, that's a great steal for a huge plant. 2 days after I got it into the house, it started showing this yellowing on these leaves. The leaves were drooping, drying out, and then getting these brown spots as well. So here's a photo of what it looked like originally. It was beautiful, but it had root rot really badly. I still have not repotted it, I'm going to be honest with you. I've just cut off a lot of the leaves. It's just such a big plant that I need to make sure I get the time and a tarp to do it within my apartment. Okay, and then we have this guy. This is a philodendron. This guy is perfectly happy. This is how it's meant to look. It's meant to be that golden yellow color. That's its natural coloring. So sometimes variegation in houseplants makes them look a bit sick, but they're perfectly healthy. That's how the genetics want it to look. All right, so let's go over some curling leaves. This is common in ficuses in general, but it's often either due to high temperatures, pest damage, diseases, or nutrient deficiencies. We'll go through some examples. If your plant is too close to a window, sometimes the leaves will start curling due to like the sunlight, but you'll also see that brown crispiness from the sunburn. This example that I have for you guys is Ficus aubrey. You can see these leaves that are brand new are curling up. The older leaves were pretty healthy. They were completely curling up. So what my mum did for me, because this is at her house, she's taking care of this plant for me for right now, is cut off all of the dying black and brown leaves and those stems they were on, and then repotted it. So I think this was a disease or / nutrients deficiency that was going on, because repotting helped a lot. We'll see what happens to it. see how it goes. All right, so spots on stems and leaves. So this is also a really common issue where all of a sudden there's a little yellow spot or a little brown spot. If it is a dark brown spot, it could be due to overwatering and root rot, like we saw on that alocasia. It could also be due to disease, which I have some example photos of, or it could be pests. If the patches are dry, it's most likely due to underwatering. Could be nutrients deficiencies or sunburn. I don't think I have a photo of sunburn for you guys, but sunburn is often in the middle of the leaf and it'll be a circle shape, like the light is hitting the leaf in the exact spot where it's burning. Normally you just have to move your plant a bit further back from the window. And then you can also do herbicide and fertilizer burn, like we saw in that first image with the plants with the rocks glued onto the soil. Root rot can often travel up the plant, which is why it turns black and brown. That is actually rotting in the leaves. So rot will travel up the stems of the plants. The herbicide and fertilizer burn will be on the tips of the leaves first, but it will spread inwards. And then the best way to get rid of that is to aerate the soil and then prune the damaged leaves off. Repotting can help as well. Once they're burnt from fertilizer and herbicide, the only way to get the plant to be healthy again is to have the new growth. Okay, so then we have pale white spots. Oftentimes they're not a big deal. They're just residuals from either pesticides or hard water. They're easy to wipe off. You can also see dark spots on the stems. Normally that's due to lack of sunlight or disease. It can also be completely normal and just be part of the plant and the way it grows. So here we have some of those yellow spots, and then the underside directly related is a dark brown spot. This is a fungus. It's hard to tell, but it kind of looks like cocoa powder when you look up close to it. This is best to be treated with like a neem oil and cutting off the affected leaves. This is the monstera I currently have, and I've currently just been cutting off the leaves for it. Because of the cats, I need to make sure I can treat it outside, and I haven't had the time to do that. Okay, what do you think's going on here with this plant and these leaves? Any ideas? Sunburn pests, sunburn through window blinds. So, good ideas. But this was a grow light that was too close to the leaf while it was unfurling. So grow lights can be great, but they can also still burn your plants. You need to make sure they have the proper distance from your plants. Yeah, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the Q&A and I will either Mary and Carrie will answer them or I'll get to them after the presentation. Okay, so this leaf, it's kind of hard to see, but you see how it looks like it's really shiny? That's actually white powder that's left all over it. And this is just from it being in a nursery and it being misted with hard water. That's how they were watering it. It was pretty far in the back, so they were spraying all of the leaves with it, and as it dried up, it left those calcium residues. The easiest thing to do for this is just to wipe the leaves off with a wet towel. Make sure you get fresh towels between different leaves so you don't spread diseases. But super easy, and doing that will actually really promote your growth because the photosynthesis rate will increase because the chlorophyll will be happy. Okay, and then here, this is a Dieffenbachia. This is most likely root rot, or it could be sunburn. This was also in a nursery, so I couldn't take a look at the roots, unfortunately. But because this looks like sunburn to me, but how dark that spot is in the middle there, that looks like root rot to me. So here's that photo I was talking about earlier. So this is in strawberry plants, but it's a really good image to show you what root rot does to the roots. This is a really healthy root system for a strawberry plant. And this is what it looks like when it gets root rot. The roots turn black, they get all mushy, squishy, slimy, and they smell terrible. If you take them out the soil and you're like, this doesn't smell like the fresh soil I'm used to smelling, it's most likely root rot. Okay, so here we have a prayer plant, which is a type of calathea. You can see this stippling on the leaves. It's not super consistent between leaf to leaf. This is most likely due to thrips. They're these tiny little insects that like to pierce the plant and then suck out the moisture, which leaves those tiny spots behind. You can set up sticky cards for these guys. You can also treat with like neem oil or something similar to that. Sticky cards work fairly well for them, especially if you have an isolated incident of them. Okay. And then what about this plant? What do you guys think is going on with this one? With the stippling, the white edge, any ideas? Spider mites? Too hot? Normal, yes, natural, absolutely. This is a completely healthy plant. It's actually called spiderweb. It's meant to look like that. That's how it was grown. That's its genetics. It's really beautiful when you know it. But yeah, it looks like so many of the issues that we often see. So that's why it's so important to know what your plant naturally wants. Okay, let's talk about sudden leaf fall. This is something that is very common and people often panic about. Sometimes it's just the plant being dramatic. It's environmental changes. This is often the case for fiddle leaf figs. They could be very dramatic plants where they're just like, you haven't moved me in 6 months, but I'm not happy in this spot anymore. I'm going to drop every single one of my leaves, which is what just happened to my fiddle leaf fig. I taught this class 3 months ago, and I was like, I'm so proud to tell you guys that I have a happy fiddle leaf fig for the first time in my life. Well, no more. Which is why I didn't purchase them for a long time. I was like, I'll give it another shot. Shouldn't have. It's not happy with me. It could also be pests. There are plenty of pests that can cause sudden leaf drop, but normally there'll be other symptoms before those pests. So this is a fiddle leaf fig that my friend found in a dumpster, and he repotted it and then gave it to my other friend. And you can see what this is where it was split and how happy that fiddle leaf fig is now. So sometimes they will drop all of their leaves. They're dramatic plants, but oftentimes they'll start regrowing anyway. Even without any of their leaves, they'll store some stuff in the soil. Sometimes they're dead, but it's a plant. It's okay. You can let it go. That's the best thing to know. Okay, so let's talk about wilting. Wilting can be caused by both under and over watering. Wilting, sorry, which is quite confusing to think that your plant's going to wilt from over watering. So that's why it's important to have that drainage and make sure that you're checking. When you check before you water, you should be putting your finger or like a chopstick at least 2 inches into the soil to feel if the soil is moist or not. You can get moisture meters. Sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't work so great. You need to make sure you're cleaning them from pot to pot so you don't spread any diseases. And I don't mean just like wiping with water. I mean like using like a Clorox wipe or something to actually kill anything that's on it. Wilting can also be due to root-bound plants. Sometimes they're like, oh, I'm root-bound, there's nowhere for me to go, I'm going to be dramatic and wilt. It can be due to high temperatures. If you have high temperatures, you most likely just need to increase the amount of water. It can also be due to pests. There are plants that will naturally curl their leaves in when they need water. Pothos are a great example of that. They start wilting when they need water and they tell you. Peace lilies are the same. Peace lilies are great beginner plants because they wilt. They aren't pet safe though, I will say that. They're not cat safe. If the plant is root bound, you want to squeeze the roots like you're giving it a little massage to loosen them up, and then remove as much soil as gently as possible before repotting it. So let's have a look at a root-bound plant. So this is a snake plant, but snake plants love to be root-bound. They will put out more growths if they are root-bound. I have had a snake plant since I moved to Reno in, what was that, 2022, that I have not repotted once and is as happy as could be. So the rule of repotting every year isn't necessary, especially if you don't want your plants getting bigger and bigger. oftentimes all you need to do is take it out the pot and provide new nutrients, new soil, instead of giving it more space. So this is another calathea. You're seeing that a lot of the problems I'm showing you are often seen in calathea. This soil is incredibly dry. You can see that it's actually pulling away from the sides of the pot. This plant needs fully repotting. This soil is most likely hydrophobic at this point, which means that the soil has not enough airspace between its molecules for the water to fill. If you don't have that airspace, your roots will end up drowning or suffocating. So happy soil is a happy plant. Okay, so this, other things are growing in your soil. Like, oh no, what am I going to do? If it's fungus, such as like a mushroom, that you can physically see the mushroom, it's not always a bad thing. It can be a sign that you have really healthy soil. It could also mean your soil's a bit too wet, too moist. You might have too much moss in there or something that's holding onto the moisture for too long. If you are worried about fungus, you can use fungicides, repot, and change your watering schedule. It could be pests, or it could also be normal plant growth. We'll go through some examples of this. So this is powdery mildew on succulents. It grows in this, like, it kind of is fuzzy, but sometimes it isn't super fuzzy, but it's a white growth that like looks like a spider web, kind of, a really dense spider web. This, if I had it in my house, I'm going to be honest, I would trash the plant because I would not want it to infect my other plants by accident. It's really hard to control when you get a huge outbreak of it. So I would trash the plant. It's okay. There's more plants in the world. Right here, this is an alocasia with spider mite webbing. So you guys can see right here, this webbing and these tiny, tiny dots. That's spider mite damage. They're a type of mite that produces webbing, and each one of those dots is one mite. So they are teeny, teeny, tiny. You can see under here, these leaves have brown spots. That's due to it being too close to the window. That's not necessarily due to the spider mite damage. But this plant was really severely infected with spider mites. In this case, you can treat with neem oil. Neem oil works really well on spider mites. There's a bunch of other products as well that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But wiping down the plant helps a lot too. Spider mites are hard to catch. Oftentimes they, because they're so small, you don't see them in the store, and then you get home and a week later you have webbing like this because their populations grow so quickly, which is why it's so important to isolate your plants when you first get them. So here are some signs of fungus. We have some beautiful mushrooms. I would not be too concerned if I had either of these growing in my plants. I actually had mushrooms similar to this growing in my snake plant. I reduced watering a bit because I was a little worried I was overwatering it since it's not a high water need plant. But it just means that you have a living soil. It's healthy. It's nothing to be concerned about unless it starts smelling, in which case you might have rot growing. So here's an example from a greenhouse, the Master Gardener greenhouse here in Washoe County, where they had this really weird fungus growing on their plants. This is not normal. This would need treated. This is not healthy for the plants, but it's also really beautiful. Being able to see, it looks kind of like tiny blueberries on little sticks on the plant. Super interesting. Okay, and then this white crust. I'm sure all of you have seen this in a houseplant at some point. This is salt and calcium buildup in on the top of your soil from the water, from the tap water. It's totally normal. The best thing to do is to remove it, just like scoop up that part of the soil, because it can, over time, as it continues leaching into the soil, it's not great for your plant. But it's not a growth or anything. Your plant will be okay. In fact, I still have that plant sitting right there. I haven't removed it. It's still alive and growing and well. Okay. And then We're going to talk about rhizomes because these are things that sometimes people notice growing in their plant when they repot it, and they're like, what is this growing in my roots? This is a natural part of your plant. Rhizomes are a type of root that store water and nutrients for your plant. They're really common in ZZ plants. These ones are very dried out. You can see this plant was in the middle of repotting. I left the soil get dry before repotting, so it's easier to remove. But they're kind of like potatoes. And they store nutrients for the plant. They're really good to keep for the plant. It keeps them healthy. I actually split this plant. You can see there's some more rhizomes over there. I split it so that one plant had one plant had the other. So during the repotting phase, it was easy for them because they had that stored nutrients. And then let's see some flowers. So these plant flowers don't always look like a rose or like an apple blossom, which is what you typically think of when you see a plant flower. For house plants, they're not always as pretty. So this is a ZZ plant flower. That's actually the one that's back in my office that our co-worker brought in to have us take care of, and now it's flowering. It's very happy. Flowers are a good sign for the most part. It means your plant is happy. However, there are some plants that are monocarpic, which means when they flower, the plant will begin dying. Typically, they put out pups. So pups are baby plants. So bromeliads are the best example of this, where you have the main plant right here, and it will start putting out baby plants around the base of it as it flowers to attract pollinators. The pups are normally genetically identical to the main plant. Because they haven't been reproduced through pollination with the flower. So this right here, this is an air plant that's in the bromeliad family, and this is what the bromeliad flowers kind of look like. This one hasn't fully opened yet, but you can see it's starting to grow. So if you see this in a store, that's what that is. If you have it growing, an air plant flowering is actually amazing. I haven't seen it. This is the first time I saw it in person. I haven't seen it in anyone's house. It's kind of hard to do. They have to be very, very happy. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about stretching. So this is when it's called exfoliation. I think I say that correctly, where the plants don't get enough sunlight. It happens a lot when you have plants in offices or plants that are like 10 plus feet away from the window. They need the plants need light, so they'll start growing leggier, where their leaves are further apart to save energy to get closer to that light, where they will then put all the leaves up the top to make sure that it's getting as much light as possible. Okay, I think I saw a question about this in the Q&A about how do you shine up your plant's leaves. You can buy leaf shine products, but I really don't recommend these products. They tend to create a sticky layer that collects dust on your plant, and that blocks the process of photosynthesis. Your leaves have things called stomata that are basically pores for the leaves. They allow the exchange of gases for photosynthesis to occur, for your plants to then grow. You can get these leaf shine products that make your leaves look so super shiny and beautiful. However, they'll block those pores, and then the photosynthesis doesn't occur, and your plant typically doesn't survive as well. The best thing to do is either shower your plant, just put it in the shower, have it running hot before you put the plant in, and then turn it down to like lukewarm so it gets the steam and the wet moisture from the shower itself, or using a damp cloth, a microfiber towel, a tea towel, anything like that to wipe the leaves down. I've also seen on social media that people use milk to try and make their leaves shiny. It will temporarily make your leaves shiny, but it will begin to rot. It is milk. And then you'll be left with a really foul smell and a plant that's dying. So I highly, highly do not recommend using milk. My mom uses mayonnaise. Yeah, I'd love to hear about how her plants are doing. I don't think the plants will survive very well long term, is my understanding of it and my experience with it. Yeah, not well. Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Okay, so I do have a thank you slide and some questions. I think I have about 20 minutes. I know I ran through that really quickly, but I wanted to make sure I left enough time for you guys for your questions. Um, After questions, I might have time. I have crime time where we go through some other plants where you guys can tell me what you think is wrong with them. Okay, but let's do questions first.
Thanks, Megan. Mare, did you want to put the survey link in first in case anybody needs to go early? And that will also include information for anybody who's looking for pesticide applicator CEUs. Yeah, so Mare just put the link to the evaluation and CEU instructions. So if anybody needs that, please fill that out for us to give us feedback on the presentation and to get your CEUs. So
I'm going to put the slides link in again. I saw there was a couple questions about if the slides were available.
Yeah. And it should pop up a box. It will say something about like log into box. You don't need to log in. It should automatically start downloading. So if anybody has problems or can't ever get it to download, it does depend on your internet speed as how fast it will come to you. But you can email Megan or me after if you, for some reason, can't get those. But it should work. It's working on my end. I tested it. Okay, so questions. We've got quite a few to go through here. I'm just going to start at the top. Someone said, I'm interested in getting a pothos for an aquarium, but the only good source of natural light in my room is my window. Would a pothos be okay wrapped around my horizontal blinds with its roots in an aquarium?
I don't see why not. Pothos aren't super high light requirement plants, and they would love to be in an aquarium. That's a great environment for them. They're great plants for aquatic environment. So it depends on which way your window's pointing as well. Southern windows get the most light, and then your east and west windows get more light than that, less light than that, and then your northern windows get the least amount of light. So depending on which way your window's facing, if there's anything blocking it, you can always get a grow light as well to supplement.
Okay. Next, I have I think it's alocasia. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
That was doing great, but recently lost all its leaves. Only the one stem left. Should I wait to see if it produces leaves or try repotting?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have some follow-up questions for that? I can help you if you send me an email, because it could have been a lot of different reasons for it to just drop all its leaves. Oh, I realized I sent the slides link to just the hosts. Let me resend that. And now I'll put my email in the chat as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So if we don't get into any questions or people have follow-up ones that need a little more specificity, you can email Megan. We'll try to help. We do try to keep the questions general so that the answers work for a lot of different things for different people.
Yes.
Next, ZZ plants are very difficult to repot. It's like cement in the pot. Any suggestions?
Yeah, so ZZ plants like to be root bound. That's why they're difficult to repot. They like to have a really strong root structure. What I found with mine is I have to really let the soil dry out before I repot it, and then I divide it. Sometimes you end up cutting a couple of roots when dividing it. It'll be okay. It'll heal those over. It's not a big deal, but yeah, you can sometimes end up having to break a pot because of a ZZ, or your ZZ will break the pot when they get too many roots. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. When somebody adds something, it moves mine.
Yeah, and that's what it did to me too.
Polka dot plant begonias and they drop. Can be many different factors, I assume.
That could be a lot of different reasons. It depends how they dropped them as well. If you see that the leaf on the stem is like a solid break where there's not really any like rotting or anything like that, that's what happens with fiddle leaf figs a lot of times. It's just the plant being dramatic. If you're seeing signs of rot, It could be root rot that's spread up to the leaves. It could also be a cold draft. Begonias like warmer weather.
Okay, this is a good one. Insects. What would you recommend to combat aphids?
So aphids are really tough inside. There's a lot of stuff you can do when they're outside. The best thing to do is showering your plants. Aphids are not very strong. Once they get knocked off the top of the plant, they won't be able to climb back up it, especially if you give it a really good shower with some strong pressure. Not strong enough to break your plant, but just strong enough that the aphids get knocked off. That will help a ton. There's also plenty of oils that you can apply. Just make sure you apply them outside, bring the plant back in, and isolate the aphid plants before they infect your other plants.
Next person asks, what is your recommendation about putting rocks at the bottom of a pot for drainage?
So I used to do this. I don't recommend it anymore. I found that if it's one big rock right before, right at the bottom, it's not normally a big deal, but putting a layer of rocks at the bottom of your pot, can often cause more root rot issues because the roots are going to grow down. They don't have anywhere else to go. They have to go down, and they end up putting all of their little roots into those rocks. And when the drainage isn't good enough, that water sits there and then they get root rot. So mixing rocks into your soil, great idea. It allows more pore space, but having just a layer of rocks at the bottom, you have to watch your plants a bit more.
Okay, another question about potting soil. What is the best way to hydrate potting soil before using it to repot plants? I feel like I always make soup and can't find a balance between that and hydrophobic soil.
Yeah. So, when you store your potting soil, that's the more important thing. Make sure it's stored in a way that's airtight. That will also prevent pests getting into it. And it will keep the moisture in so your soil doesn't dry out while it's not being used. You can, well, I don't try and mix water into my soil before repotting, honestly. I'll repot my plant in the dry soil, water it, tap the sides really rigorously so the soil moves and it creates the space where it needs more soil, and then add more soil in. Because repotting with soup it's tough.
Yeah. Katie says, I've been battling mealybugs on my succulents and have tried physically killing them with alcohol, hosing them off, repotting, neem oil, isolation, and can't seem to eliminate them. Any other ideas for other tricks?
Oh, that's tough because that's all the stuff I would recommend. Mealybugs can live in the soil. They can live in the base of your plant as well. So when you're repotting, I would recommend hosing off the roots as well. Get as much soil off as possible. If you email me, I might be able to provide instructions on dunking the roots as well, in an alcohol solution. I want to make sure I give you the right percentages and stuff. So I'm not just going to say it here, but that can help kill any that you can't see. Mealybugs are tough. I've lost a couple plants. Well, given up a couple plants to mealybugs.
Yeah, hard pest.
Oh, Abigail says beneficials are great. Ladybugs and lacewings. Abigail's great for houseplants. She did a houseplant talk for us for Grow Your Own last year. I will give a heads up. Don't release ladybugs in your apartment or your house. I've done that. It ended up with me having ladybugs inside for years. No, you're fine, Abigail. I appreciate it. So don't release things inside your house when they're not in a contained environment, because you will have ladybugs for a very, very long time. And they smell. They do smell.
Next question is there a soil drench you would recommend for killing bad guys in the soil, or would it be killing good guys as well?
Yeah, most of the soil drenches will kill everything. Pesticides are not exclusive to bad pests. They don't know what is good and what is bad. The pests are affected by them. So it will kill the good stuff and the bad stuff. I can't recommend anything specific. Yeah.
Someone asked about grape ivy. Do they tend to drop leaves regularly?
Oh, I do not know. I don't specifically know for grape ivy. If you send me an email, I can help.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular one.
Yeah.
Someone asked about dormant oils. Do those
Hmm.
make the plant somewhat shiny? Bad
Yeah.
idea.
No, it's not a bad idea. That's how like oils work as well. They do like suffocate the stuff that's on it, like being applied to it. That's how neem oil works. It's not a bad idea. Just don't over apply in general with all pesticides. Those oils are specifically made to treat something, unlike using milk or mayonnaise or something like that. That's something that should be in your pantry, not on your plant.
The slide with the photo of your monstera with brown spots. What were those likely caused by?
Let's go back. This is fungus. Um, it came like that from the nursery. I didn't see it when I bought the plant, because it was only on one leaf, but then it spread across the plant. I think this is the one they're talking about.
I think so. Any ideas on how to kill white flies permanently?
Whiteflies are a struggle. It takes a lot of different treatments. The larvae, I believe, live in the soil, so nematodes might be able to help you. They can be pricey, but they do work really well. And when you use nematodes, you typically only need to use them once a year. As long as you keep your soil moist enough, the nematodes will continue living in the soil. And it works really well. But if you let your soil dry out, the nematodes will die. And follow the instructions on the nematode packaging because every single one has a different concentration. So you'll have to dilute it at different rates.
Makes sense. Someone asked about moisture meters. They've had an instance where they have two different meters that give different readings often, even in the same spots in the same planter. Do they go bad or is it a brand issue? Any ideas on how to get a
Yeah.
good
So
soil meter that's accurate?
that's the issue with some soil meters, is they're not measuring the wetness of the soil necessarily. They can also measure the salts in the soil because it's just something that gives the electrodes a connection, if that makes sense. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you have two different readings. That's why I recommend using your finger, or a chopstick, like wooden chopstick from takeout, because if you will put that in the soil, leave it in, it'll actually absorb the moisture and you'll be able to see how wet it is. Um, it's not, the soil meters can be great to give you an idea, especially if it's further down, but every soil meter is going to be different and you have to gauge it yourself based on what that soil meter is telling you.
Yeah. Oh, good general question here from Cindy. Do you recommend specific pots over others? I've heard terracotta pots dry out quickly, but they breathe
Mhm.
better. Suggestions on what pots are best?
Yeah, so it will depend on your watering style. I have a mix of ceramic, coated ceramic, terracotta, plastic. If you are watering your plant frequently because you love your plant and you like caring for it, I would recommend going for like a terracotta with drainage or a ceramic with drainage. Um, if you have a plant that's like really high up and hard to reach, then I'd recommend a plastic pot that contains that moisture more. So it depends on the plant and what that plant needs.
Makes sense. Yeah. And some people like love them to death, right? With too much
Yes,
water. So
yes.
if you know that's you.
Mhm. Yes, overwatering and loving your plant to death is the most common thing for plants to die from.
Question about soil gnats. Oops, where did it go? It's jumping around here. I've seen suggestions of using hydrogen peroxide solutions as a soil drench for fungus gnats. It said it doesn't hurt the roots. Thoughts on that?
So, I can't give you specific recommendations on that due to the fact that it was hydrogen peroxide, correct?
Yeah.
Isn't labeled for plant usage. There's a bunch of home remedies out there that work really well. Like isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip does work really well for mealybugs, and there's been studies to show that. I'm not going to give you recommendations on hydrogen peroxide without looking into the science of it more, just because it's not on the label. I don't want to give you bad advice.
Makes sense. Yeah, always following the label, right?
Yes.
Um, what about fertilizing? How often and what types of fertilizers should I use? That's a really big, broad question. It's going to depend on your plant.
Yes. Depend on your soil, your drainage, um, how you feel. I like using one that comes in a small container that then needs a lot of dilution because I'm in an apartment with not much storage. So it really depends on what brand you're buying as well. Um, the houseplant course that I sent that was in one of the links, there was more recommendations and information on fertilizer. I'll put all of those links in the chat again. Um, yeah.
Okay, just a few more. If I don't get to your question, it might be because it's really specific to your situation, in which case it probably makes sense to either email us or your local extension to look at a specific issue, because it's not one we're going to be able to diagnose necessarily via the chat. But just a few more minutes for a couple more. We have one about best way to eliminate scale.
So there's two different types of scale. You can get armored scale that have a hard exoskeleton. Those ones are really easy to control because they can't move once they clamp down onto the plants. The crawler stage, which is that immature stage, is the only stage that moves, and they can be controlled easily if you just literally just pinch them in the adults, and they'll kind of squish. Mealybugs, which are the soft type of scale, sorry. Those guys, a Q-tip with isopropyl alcohol and individually scooping them off works really well. Even if you end up dropping the mealybug, it'll be okay because the alcohol dissolves its outer cuticle layer, killing the plant. Oh, not the plant, the insect, sorry.
Great. We have, and there's been some in the chat too about water. So if tap water isn't great, what do you recommend? Some people asked about dechlorinated versus filtered.
Yeah, so it will depend on your plant and your budget and everything. I just use tap water. If my plants can't survive tap water, they're going. You can use like a Brita filter, that'll help a ton. That type of filter in your fridge. Or if you have a fridge that has like a water filter on it or built in already, that's better than nothing. There are people that enjoy their plants so much that they will go and buy water from the store. They'll buy distilled water or like really specific filtered water for their plants. I can't give you advice on specifically which ones because it will depend on your plant, which ones is best. But yeah, the calatheas do prefer to have water that is very pure. So I'll say expensive plants. They have expensive taste.
And since we're at time here, I'm going to just ask one more question.
Okay.
Someone asked, what is your favorite houseplant?
Oh, that's a great question. In all honesty, my first houseplant was a Monstera deliciosa, and I do love them. I love the shape of their leaves, the holes they develop in their leaves, and how huge they get. They are beautiful. I have the most pothos though, because they're so easy to take care of. Here, let me put my up. And if you guys have any questions, please email me. I'll get back to you. My monster is 56 years old. Wow. That's crazy. Does your tap water sitting overnight benefit in removing chlorine? Yes, it can. Letting your tap water sit does help.
Yeah, let it off gas some of the chlorine a little bit.